You keep this place like someone still lives here, Miriam murmured. Jack didn't look at her. I come up once every winter, light a fire, clean the stove, pretend I'll smell her biscuits again. Not because I believe it, just so she's not completely gone. Miriam touched the edge of the table, rough with old scratches and new polish. You ever bring anyone up here? No, he said, only you. That night, the wind scraped the roof like it was trying to whisper secrets. The fire cracked low. Miriam sat wrapped in a blanket, her dress still smudged from the trail. She hadn't touched the stew Jack made. Instead, her eyes kept searching the corners of the room like they were waiting to accuse her. Finally, she asked, voice low, "You didn't come to that wedding because you pitied me, did you?" Jack looked up from the fire. His eyes were tired but clear. "No," he said. "Then why?" she pressed, staring at the flames. "Why pick me up like I was worth something when the whole town laughed?" Jack stood and pulled something from his saddlebag, a small tin box. He sat beside her, opened it, and took out a worn handkerchief. Inside was a folded paper, yellowed with time, and a broken biscuit, nearly dust now. "I had swamp fever 4 winters ago," he said, "laid out behind Thompson's pasture, half out of my mind. Everyone thought I was done for. No one came close." Miriam's brow furrowed. "That was you? The fevered man we heard about at the Boyd place?" He nodded. "Most folks ran. Your father tried to shoot a coyote near the coop and found me half frozen. You were the one who came out, didn't you? With a kettle and bread?" "I don't even remember," she whispered. "Well, I do," he said. "You handed me this." He held up the biscuit piece. "Didn't know who I was, didn't ask, just said, 'It's not much, but don't die hungry.' Then you walked away. I couldn't say thank you, couldn't say anything, but I never forgot." She stared at the biscuit. Her hands were still. "You kept it?" "Some people keep gold," Jack said. "I kept the moment someone saw me human when I didn't even look like one." The firelight danced between them. Then slowly, Miriam reached for his sleeve and gently lifted the edge. There, near the elbow, a long, pale scar stretched. "Fever burn?" she asked. "Scratched myself falling. Infection got in." She placed her hand over it, warm against his skin. "If I was worth saving then," she said, her voice thick, "then maybe I'm worth loving now." Jack didn't move, didn't speak. He only looked at her like she had just stepped from a legend he'd been waiting to believe in. Outside, the wind paused. The fire cracked. The tree whispered. Inside they sat, 2 people no longer running from the world, just waiting for morning to find them as they were, alive, seen, remembered. Morning broke soft and gold over the cabin on the hill, but Miriam Boyd was already dressed before the sun touched the windows. Her wedding dress had long been folded away, replaced now by a plain brown skirt, and her father's old vest, brushed clean and buttoned to the neck. Her hands, once made for kneading dough and feeding chickens, held a letter, ink still wet. She turned from the window. Jack was at the stove, frying something that crackled in the pan. "I'm going back," she said. He didn't ask where. He didn't need to. "I already sent a letter to Mr. Halberd," she continued. "My father's lawyer. He still owes me a favor, and he's got proof Sam faked that contract. No more hiding. I'm not running from a man who bought me like cattle and still expected gratitude." Jack flipped the pan off the flame. "You sure?" "No," Miriam said, "but I'm done being quiet." He didn't argue, just nodded and reached for his coat. "Then I'll walk behind you." They rode into Dead River at high noon. The streets slowed as they passed, murmurs rising like summer gnats. Women stopped sweeping their porches. Men leaned off fence posts. And there, outside the town hall, Sam Crane waited in his fine black coat like a vulture dressed for church. "Well, well," he sneered, arms spread like a bad host. "The bride returns. Thought you'd be too ashamed to show your face." Miriam didn't flinch. Her boots hit the ground with calm thuds. She stepped past Jack, holding a thick envelope. "I'm not here to fight," she said, "just to set the record straight." Sam snorted. "That so? Come back to sign your vows, then?" "No." She handed the envelope to the clerk beside the door. "These are affidavits, dated correspondence, and handwriting analysis, all confirming that contract you waved around was forged. You coerced me. My father never consented, and I never signed it willingly." Sam's face twisted. "You think a piece of paper's gonna save you?" he spat. "You think a crooked lawyer and that cowpoke you bedded will make anyone believe your lies?" Jack stepped forward but didn't speak. Miriam stood tall. "I don't need belief, just law. And the law says forced contracts don't hold." Sam lunged then, fast and stupid. His hand raised like thunder, fingers curled toward her throat. But Jack was faster. He caught Sam by the wrist mid-swing, twisted gently, not enough to break, just enough to make the pain hum like a warning. Jack leaned in close. His voice was low, calm, without a hint of rage. "You touch her again, and you'll find out what real humiliation tastes like. And I won't use my fists. I'll use facts. I'll use truth. You won't walk out of here with your reputation intact. You might not walk out at all." Sam's face drained white. Sheriff Thomas, who'd been watching quietly from the porch, stepped forward. "I believe that's enough. Mr. Crane, you'll be coming with me for questioning, and I suggest you don't run, because the truth's catching up to you either way." Sam yanked his arm free and backed down the steps, red-faced and sputtering. Miriam didn't wait to watch him go. She turned, shoulders square, chin up, and walked straight down the courthouse steps, past the gasps, past the gawking faces, past the same people who once laughed when she hit the ground. Jack followed, just a step behind. Always her shadow, not her shield. A woman in the crowd murmured, "That's the girl from the hill." Another whispered, "She don't look broken now." Miriam heard them, but their words didn't touch her. She walked through town like it was hers. Because today, it was. The scent of yeast and cinnamon rolled down Main Street like a morning hymn. Dead River stirred slow these days. Slower, softer, almost kinder. And much of that shift started at the corner of Barlow and 2nd, where the windows of a little bakery steamed up with something more than heat. It was hope. Flour-dusted, slow-rising, warm as sunlight hope. Miriam Boyd had painted those windows herself. Pale blue trim, streaked in places, with daisies along the corners that refused to be symmetrical. The sign above the door wasn't finished, just a hand-chalked slate that read "Open," with a smudge of flour across the corner like punctuation. The doorbell stuck sometimes, and the floorboards creaked like a memory, but it didn't matter. Because every morning before sunrise, Miriam was there. Hair tied back, sleeves rolled, hands buried in dough like it held the world. The air smelled of cinnamon, nutmeg, sometimes just plain butter and resolve. Her apron was always wrinkled, her cheeks always flushed, her eyes never once looked back. And they came. The same townsfolk who once lined a hill to watch her fall now stood quietly in line, coins in hand, heads low. They bit into crusty bread and mumbled apologies between chews. They nodded thanks without always meeting her eyes. No one said it outright, but every loaf bought was a kind of penance, every biscuit a confession. This was repentance paid in sourdough and sweat. Some gestures went beyond words. A hand-knit potholder left on the counter. A jar of jam with "sorry" carved into the lid. And once, a note folded beneath a lemon tart. "For what I said on the hill, I was wrong. Your bread tastes like courage." That afternoon, with the last tray cooling and golden light slanting through flour-dusted air, the door opened again. Jack Holloway stepped inside. He didn't speak at first, just stood in the threshold, boots caked with trail dust, holding something under his arm wrapped in brown cloth. The room smelled of nutmeg and quiet. Miriam looked up from wiping the kneading table. "We're out of cinnamon rolls," she teased, voice warm and tired. Jack shook his head. Didn't come for sweets. He stepped forward and laid the wooden board gently on the counter. Unwrapped, it was smooth pine, polished at the edges. Carved across the front in careful, unsteady lettering were the words, and J. Bakery, Bread and Brave Women. Miriam stared. Her fingers, still slick with butter, trembled slightly as she traced the carved letters. Jack cleared his throat, eyes fixed on the board. "I ain't got a ring," he said. "Never been good with fancy words, but I thought maybe this could count." He paused, then added, voice barely above a whisper, "If I could be the first loaf you sell each morning and the last glass of water you sip at night, that'd be enough for me." Miriam didn't speak. She stepped around the counter, reached for his hand, held it tight. Then she laughed, deep and sudden and honest. It rolled through the room like thunder over wheat fields. And behind the laugh came tears, quiet, hot, steady. "You fool," she whispered. "You said it exactly right." She placed his hand over her heart. "I'll say yes, but not as someone's wife. I'll be your partner. In bread, in work, in the business of not giving up." Jack nodded. He didn't need more. That evening, just before sunset, they hung the wooden sign above the door. It was crooked, the string frayed, but it was theirs. The sun hung low over Dead River, casting long golden shadows across Main Street, where laughter drifted, not cruel, not cutting, but warm and unguarded. It was the anniversary of a fall, and Miriam Boyd had baked 3 dozen pies to celebrate it. She called it "the day I hit the ground and got back up." Flyers had been slipped under shop doors and pinned to fence posts. No charge, no speeches, just bread, cider, and something that felt like forgiveness. The hill where it all began was gentler in spring. Wildflowers had crept in around the path, softening the memory of trampled grass and gawking crowds. A wooden stage stood near the crest now, borrowed from the church and draped in checkered cloth. Folding chairs circled close, filled not with gawkers but neighbors, some sheepish, some proud, all curious. Jack Holloway stood behind a small podium with a sheet of paper in hand. His voice was steady, but his ears were pink. "She once told me," he began, "that she wanted to be a bride since she was a girl, but not bought like a prize pig, not pitied like a wounded stray. She wanted to be chosen, and she was. By herself, first." The words were simple, a poem without rhyme. He spoke of butter and firelight, of a woman who had been laughed at, and who now laughed last, while handing out apple tartlets to the same people who once looked through her. When he finished, there was a pause. Then someone clapped. Then everyone did. It wasn't loud, but it was real. Miriam stood off to the side, apron tied over a yellow cotton dress, face flushed from the heat of the oven, or maybe from something deeper. She stepped forward, wiping her hands on a towel that still smelled faintly of cinnamon. An old woman near the front leaned toward her granddaughter and whispered, not quietly, "I called her a cow once. Fool that I was. Now I tell this little one, learn to bake like Miss Boyd." She baked her way out of shame. The granddaughter nodded solemnly. Miriam caught the words. She didn't flinch. Just looked toward the hilltop, the same slope where she'd once landed in the mud, with her skirt torn and her pride bleeding out into the dirt. Now, it held picnic blankets. Children rolled down its sides, laughing for the joy of it. A sign stuck near the trail read, "Watch your step, but know you can stand again." She turned to Jack, who offered her a plate and a grin. "I never thought I'd thank a wagon wheel for getting stuck," he murmured. She laughed, shaking her head. "You're still terrible at romantic lines." "I'm a rancher, not a poet." She stepped up beside him, looked out at the crowd, their mouths full, their shoulders relaxed, their eyes no longer narrowed with judgment, but softened with time. And then she said, loud enough for every last soul to hear, "They still laugh sometimes. They might always laugh, but this time, it's different." She glanced at Jack, then back to the hill, now bathed in the soft orange of evening. "Because I'm the one telling the story now. I decide where it starts, where it ends. I'm not the punchline. I'm the one still standing. Silence. Then another wave of claps. A child ran up to hand her a drawing, stick figures holding loaves of bread under a blue sky. The tallest one wore a big white apron and a smile. Miriam knelt, hugged the child gently, then looked around once more, at the people who had watched her fall, and at those who helped her rise. She smiled, not out of pride, but peace. That night, as the lanterns flickered, and the cider ran out, someone strummed a guitar. People danced slow. And up on the porch of the bakery, beneath the wooden sign carved with M&J Bakery, Bread and Brave Women, Miriam and Jack sat side by side. No one laughed. They just listened. If that story stirred something in you, if you felt the mud on Miriam's dress, the fire in Jack's voice, or the quiet pride of standing tall where you once fell, don't forget to hit that hype button and subscribe to Wild West Love Stories. More tales of grit, grace, and gut-punch romance are riding your way, because out here, love is earned, scars are honored, and nobody walks home alone. We'll see you at the next sunset.